What is up, podheads? Back with another episode of the Podioslave podcast. My name is Tony. I'm joined by Anthony and Nate.
Hello, hello.
And life is beautiful around the world, boys. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm sick, but I'm good. Sick but good. Is that possible?
Again, dude, stop. This is me all
sick,
summer.
Wait, what is it? So sick of being tired, so tired of being sick. Adam
Yes.
Lazara.
Yes.
That's
yes.
me. That is so me right now. But hey, I'm rallying. Does it sound like I'm sick?
Just a little bit. And honestly,
Maybe
I
a
mean,
little bit.
think about this. This is going to be episode 249. We've put an episode out every week for 249 weeks. We're bound to have some sickness on the mic, right?
I know. And it's happened before. There was an episode where I think you were sick, Tone, and you were like noticeably more quiet.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hey, shit happens, man. And Nate, you've been quiet for a while. No.
Exactly. Dude, soon you'll be on the other side of it at some point.
The
So
other
thank you.
side of it, yes. Oh man, how many more puns can we fit in here? You'll have a little scar tissue in your throat, but you'll be fine.
I'll be good. But I'm wearing this velvet glove right now, and it's all good, baby. It's all good.
Well, Nate, you road tripped and you're in Maine. Even though we're not in the same location together. We will be again here soon, but you're in Maine.
Yeah, it's like a parallel universe, coming from across the country, from Californication to here. So, I mean, it's a blast. Stoked to be back and chilling on the same frequency.
Anyone that doesn't know us has probably turned this episode off.
But yeah, we're going to dig into Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication. This is the last thing that we'll record that will come out in 2024. Next week's episode was recorded a few weeks back and is our second part two with Damien. But yeah, we're gonna dig into Red Hot Chili Peppers tonight, and we just want to take this quick brief second to thank everybody who's hung out with us this year. If this is your first time, thanks for joining us this time. But if you are a repeat offender and have joined Podioslave and the three of us or the two of us and a guest or whatever iteration you've listened to this year, we truly thank you for that.
Yeah, whether it's been you've actually physically joined us or virtually for an episode, recorded with us, tuned in to any episodes. I sometimes I think about if you're a listener of our podcast, what are your habits? Do you tune in Monday morning? Do you look Sunday night at midnight to see who the guest is? We do leave some breadcrumbs a lot of times, whether it's a story hint, a real hints and stuff like that, or maybe who we follow on certain platforms. That's always been a hint. But yeah, thank you very much, because you could be doing anything with your time. You're hanging with us. Hopefully we made it interesting and fun. It's been fun for us. We look forward to this. We love recording it. We love rolling it out. Most of the time rolling it out. We love
Yeah. Recording it's fun.
But yeah, it's been a blast. I truly thank you, because I know what it's like to be excited for podcasts every week. So if you're one of those people, thank you.
Yeah, I am curious, as even a part of the pod, where do people gravitate towards it? Because for me, even as a inside/outsider, I'll be Googling something and the podcast will show up in SEO, which is pretty interesting. It just shows that our reach permeates different topics and different subject matter enough that it'll actually populate on the first page of Google, which is fucking awesome. So props to you guys, props to, I guess, us and any music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any nerds out there. Yeah.
And all the nerds.
Depends on the guest, depends on the band, but you're absolutely right, because I've seen it and it's kind of cool.
It's super cool. Never thought 200 and whatever episodes back we'd be doing that. Oh, we're sitting in your basement, Twan, talking about that COVID hopefully is only going to last 2 weeks.
Yeah, the soft, and then that transition to the soft launch, which
yes,
the soft launch didn't happen, and you guys are right. So
yeah, well, Nate was on it. 2023 was the year, and it absolutely blew up. And then 2024, it felt like we were back to normal, and we're at the end of it now, and we're talking about records from 25 years ago, because why the hell not?
I think you might have just set the stage to jump into this.
I did. Yep, that was what I was doing. Hand of the baton.
That was the baton. Yeah, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Californication, 1999. Tonight we're gonna party like it's 1999. Warner Brothers Records. Rick Rubin produced, 7th studio album. The 3rd time they worked with Rubin, a band that maybe at the time people had written off. We weren't that old in 99, but I think we still knew what was going on. And I did some wikiing. I did memory bank, diving back into that. And I don't know, I time traveled this last few days. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I knew, Blood, Sex, Sugar Magic and One Hot Minute and whatnot. But you're right about being written off, especially during One Hot Minute, because there was some beef with Dave Navarro, and it permeated from like everyone that introduced me to that record to like the media. I was like, okay, so this band's not cool anymore. Am I supposed to just not like this band? you know? And it came out kind of when I was discovering music to an extent. So I feel like Californication, it was like fresh start. We're just getting into it. We're fully understanding music theory at this point. And this fucking masterpiece of a record comes out in our basically our peak form of paying attention to what's going on in the music industry. So it's kind of a perfect storm.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like that's exactly kind of how it was for me. I remember liking One Hot Minute. I remember being like you said, Nate, in that formative, like, oh, we're starting to pay attention to music. I'm 10, 11 years old. I see the video for Aeroplane on MTV, but like it felt disjointed, right? That record's super disjointed. It didn't have the weight of what came after it with this record, by the way, Californication, by the way, and then even Stadium Arcadium, which is a 3-album run in itself. But it was like, oh, what's going to happen with these guys at that point? And then, bam, John's back. We get this, 18-track absolute masterpiece, like you said, Nate, 15-track absolute masterpiece. And listening back to it, it sounds like it just came out, which is really cool. To have a record like that 25 years on, still sound fresh, still sound good. It's funky in spots, it's weird in spots. There's stuff I'd cut out, but it's still amazing.
Yeah. It's a full record for sure, which Blood Sugar Sex Magic, I never owned that. That was pre me owning music, really, because it was 91, 92. But I knew the music videos. And that was the thing with that record is I remember like on MTV, Under the Bridge and Give It Away. Those Under the Bridge for sure was in MTV's like top music videos of all time. You remember those? The countdowns? That was way up there. So you knew about them. And then with One Hot Minute, it's funny how even back then, pre-internet, you kind of knew that, like, I wouldn't say it got canned. Like, that's not fair. It was a letdown, and maybe it was because of Rolling Stone, maybe it was word of mouth. I don't know what it was, but like the singles, My Friends and Aeroplane, those were good. But by and large, it was a departure, changing band members as well. But it was kind of a letdown. And then they come back with this. And it's kind of returned to form. And we'll get into the track list because that opening track, it's a fuck you, we're back, if there ever was one.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into all that shit. But it's a redemption album for certain people, but for the band as a whole too. But yeah, what a wild time. Like I'm not familiar with Mother's Milk as much. And then there were two or three before Blood Sugar Sex Magic, I think. I think those are more, not as produced and things like that. So if you're a true, deep cut Red Hot Chili Peppers person, then, you know a little more about it than I do. But from Blood, Sex, Sugar to One Hot Minute, it's this like arc, right? And they just come back and they hit you.
Peaks and valleys hard, right? I mean, big time.
It's my favorite album. It is my favorite album of theirs.
Big time breakout with Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and then One Hot Minute was kind of a letdown after that, even though it wasn't their first into their second record, which sometimes you get that sophomore slump. This felt like a sophomore slump, but it wasn't. And then you get this one, the great comeback. So yeah, it's my second favorite album by them, but I'm with you. It's a great record.
It's interesting too, because Navarro is not like a subpar guitarist, so for him to come into the fold, both from the record company and the band, they toured together with Jane's Addiction quite a bit back in the day. They're all friends. So, it seems like it would be a good fit, but you think about like a band like Rage Against the Machine, if Tom Morello left and they wanted to continue and they bring in like, Adam Jones from Tool, it's like, well, yeah, he's phenomenal too, but it's just not the same. And that differential is just not cohesive enough. There's just enough difference where it's like, well, it's such a key component to the band. John is such a ginormous part of this band that his exit is like, well, I hate to say break up, and I'm sure they considered it, but so paramount to the sound of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, especially before, and then, like you said, to return to form and then elevate it on steroids, because it's going in directions that I don't even think they really touched upon, with the exception of Under the Bridge and a few other tracks that, slower jams and kind of melodic jams that Chili Peppers had put out in the past.
Yeah.
That when a key member like that leaves, like a Frusciante with these guys, or like Wes Borland with Limp Bizkit, when they replace him, this is a decision they got to make. It's like, do you bring in a guy who sounds like the old guy and it's like a caricature of the old guy? So it's like a second rate thing. Or you bring in a new guy who's proven, who has their own sound. They go that direction. But then this is a departure from probably what made you popular. So it's tough. And the thing is, it's tough to stay together as a band. So it's tough all around. I think One Hot Minute has spots, but it's not as funky. Like I actually listened to it today. That Coffee Shop song, which is like kind of it's like heavier, right? It's heavier for them, but it's like it would have been out of place on Blood Sugar Sex Magic. It's a crazy dynamic. It's a delicate dance if you want to still stay a band and bring in someone new like that.
Absolutely, totally. It's something that people don't think of, especially when you're a band this big. You're just like, oh, give me more of what you just did, right? Like you had this thing that hit with Under the Bridge, and and then you had Blood Sugar Sex Magic with Give It Away, Go Nuts, and people are like, all right, I want more of this band. Give me more of this band. And then they're not that band anymore because a main component said, I'm stepping away. And you bring in a guy like Dave Navarro, who was proven, had been in bands and had done his thing and has his own kind of way about him. And it works in spots, I would agree. I do like that record, but not to the level that they end up reaching after he leaves and they bring John back. And John comes back for this record, and you're right, they put Around the World out, and you're like, holy shit, these guys are back. Not only are they back, they are better than they've ever been.
Little side note on the cohesion of the band. I think I read this today in prep for this too. I hope this is accurate, but I read that they had written between 30 and 40 songs in the writing sessions for this record. And they recorded the songs collectively, like in the studio, everyone playing their instruments at the same time. That's extremely rare. If anyone out there does the nerd research on bands putting, usually it's like they're recording their parts separately. They get mixed and kind of they do their takes until they get the perfect take, and they kind of blend it together. To record all in the same room, almost like a live performance, is pretty rare. I think it's because it actually, people start stepping on people's toes, so it's a hard dynamic to perform all together. But that shows how important this band or this four piece, and it's not the original four, right? Because even John's not an original member. The cohesion is so strong that they wrote 40 songs in a writing session, which is incredible, and recorded the full album as a band live, which is just, it's unreal. When I read that, I was like, that's really cool, and actually makes sense considering how fluid the record is.
Yeah, and this is obviously pre the era where people are sending files across the country. Like I would at this time, and I'm sure they probably still do, all live in California.
California? No way. They like California?
California, here we come.
I can't wait to post that meme that goes around a lot around the Chili Peppers, that like movie or TV show where that kid's in the background, in the back of the car, just saying California, California, and they're like, this is Anthony Kiedis writing his first song. Have you seen that one?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'll send it in the group. It's
I have
great.
Seen it. Yeah. No, it's and like that, even like that theme throughout this band's career, and certainly on this album, I think that's a conscious choice you make as a unit, or at least you get the blessing. And I feel like I don't see any world where this album could have been written and be this good in today's environment if the band isn't living in the same spot. Like, to me, this is those, like, we hear about like the Retreat albums, Incubus, Morning View, like, that's a product of the moment. That's a product of those guys living together. That's a product of Rick Rubin walking around with no shoes on saying, do this,
or just walking around with no shoes on doing nothing. But yeah, I got you.
It's a product of Rick Rubin with no shoes, not talking. Okay.
Calling in, say, how you guys doing?
You guys still there?
I'm sorry. I love to shit on Rick Rubin.
Reference,
just
right?
Just a joke. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Actually, did we learn that?
We did. No, we learned that. Greg told us that. I think it's in an episode. I'll go back and look to be safe, but I think it's in an episode.
If you know, you know. If you don't, listen back to our catalog.
Yeah, go find it.
Yeah, these are stories that we're being told allegedly, so it's not us.
But yeah, to be able to get together in the same space and create, this feels like that, and the next record feels like that, and the next record feels like that, and I sometimes miss, obviously, those times, and I'm glad that bands still try to do it in spots, because I think it makes for a better listening experience. there are still good records that have been piecemealed together and people doing stuff in different locations. I'm not knocking those. I'm just, this one feels like they were all in the room together, just banging out songs and putting together ideas. And some of them are maybe never got fully fleshed out and still made the record and are still cool. And some of them are absolutely fully fleshed out. And like, this was a product of us being in the same space and putting this together.
It's cohesive, where I think One Hot Minute really isn't. And we'll get into some exceptions because there's a couple skippers on this, but it's collectively in the same audio realm where One Hot Minute is not. That's just my perception. And I'm not, a One Hot Minute, I haven't really deep dove it, but I remember it and I listened back to it today. So, but Ruben, they bring him back. It's the third time. And I read that there was talks they might move on from him. And
Yeah.
wouldn't that have been something? How would this album have turned out without him? We'll never know, but he did, I think, bring out the best in them in this writing session.
Oh, he's done that. He's done that to a lot of bands, right? He's brought out the best in a lot of bands when it comes to that. And sometimes that's less is more. I'm not joking like I typically am with him. And sometimes that's just like, you're pointed in one direction. Say you're pointed at 12 noon, and he's like, hey, maybe point at 12:05. And that works too, right? I mean, it's just different enough for you to see something in a completely different light. I think a lot of his genius is that.
Yeah, I think it's that. And also, I remember reading a while ago that Rick Rubin had mentioned somewhere in his journeys of producing different artists and different bands that he doesn't know anyone that understands or thinks about music so deeply than John Frusciante. So I think there's a relationship there that's like, maybe unparalleled, where it's like, this guy is so in that universe that like I trust him enough that I can just guide him and he'll kind of do his thing. Again, Frusciante is such a giant part of this band. So the fact that Rick Rubin and Frusciante have that relationship, or that trust, rather, from Rubin, producer, to more artists, like, dude, you do your thing. Like, you got it. And you're right. You might steer him left or right a little bit, but for the most part, like, this guy is transcending something that very few people can do. I mean, he's like the Jimi Hendrix of our era. So as a producer, you must just be so happy you're in the same room with this mastermind genius.
Yeah, it's a trust you don't get from just the first time working with someone. It comes from multiple sessions. It also helps that like the albums that he worked with them on did fucking really well. So like,
yeah, right.
It works. Like, it's a proven thing. It's like we have certain repeat guests on this podcast that like, we know they're gonna bang because we vibe with them. Get a lot of a lot of big fan base, all that stuff.
The senses of humor mesh well, and the beats mesh well. Yeah, we've had a bunch of those people over the now 200 and almost 50 episodes where you could point to that. And there's something to be said about being comfortable with somebody. And like, I think the three of us, we had a break. We've had breaks a couple times where the three of us have not been able to do it together. But I think we jump right back in. It's like, oh yeah, I know how to talk music with you guys. You guys know how to talk music with me. I'm like, we can do this not in our sleep, but pretty damn close at this point.
You want to talk tracks?
Let's talk tracks. I like this idea. Yeah, I did what Nate did. I did the parentheses without parentheses.
Awesome.
So we did talk about Around the World, but that is a We're Back song. Like, if a perfect, that was the home for that song. They come out, Feli's fucking bass line. It's loud and crazy at the beginning. The hip hop vibes in the verses, the melodic choruses. It's a perfect song. I don't know. Maybe that's a segue for an upcoming episode.
Oh yeah, you never know.
It's a perfect. I'll say this. It's a perfect Red Hot Chili Peppers song, and it's a perfect song to kick off this album, and kind of like we said, a return song. I
agree. One of my favorite songs, probably a top 10 Chili Pepper song for me, just in general. And it's a great way to open an album. And we talk about that all the time on this podcast, right? We love the sequencing ideas. We love how it makes an album flow. And this one is a great one to not only announce, hey, this is the start of our new record, you're in for a ride, but hey, we're back. Like, as a band, the four of us are together. We are a finely tuned machine, and here's a sample A.
Yeah, well said. Especially because the lead-off singles are slower, kind of melodic jams. So you're almost expecting, is this whole record going to be like that? Which is obviously almost never the case. But they pop out with that song for the intro, and you're like, oh damn, okay, this is the Red Hot Chili Peppers. This is their sound, which is like funk, rock, psychedelic, all over the place. And these kind of slower jams, especially leading off as a single, is more like they used to be more of the deep cuts, whereas this record kind of leans on that a little bit more, which we'll get into.
So yeah, Around the World is a good way to kick off the album, right? But it's not the first song we got to hear off this album, right? The first single was Scar Tissue, and that came out a couple of weeks before the record dropped in late May of '99. And Nate, I remember we were really close to being done in our 8th grade year at the same middle school, because Nate and I went to the same middle school too. And it was, I think, it's the reason we became friends and music friends, this song, which is kind of crazy to say. So thanks, Scar Tissue, for creating the Podioslave podcast to an extent, right?
That's funny. You mentioned that the other day at a friend's house, at Rob's, actually.
Nerdvoyance, yeah.
Yeah. And I had not forgotten about it. I just hadn't thought about it in a while. And I remember exactly where it was. It was like that walkway through the trees, like to our middle school, right? Like that little
in
pathway.
Between the middle school and the elementary school that were right
there.
there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like a vivid memory. And when you brought it up, I knew exactly when it happened, where. Crazy, man.
And the joke was we thought the lyrics were Scotch Tape That I Wish You Saw, and Nate wrote that in my 8th grade yearbook. Scotch Tape That I Wish You Saw.
Was that a bit, or did you actually think he said that?
No, we knew it was Scotch Tissue, but it was funny. It was like, when you have a secret handshake with a friend when you see him. This was our secret handshake. Just like, yeah, Scotch Tape That I Wish You Saw.
So the bonding through the woods, was it? It was over the love of the song, I assume, right?
Yeah, and just music in general, and being like, oh, you're a music nerd too? Cool, like we should hang out more.
Nate's doing like mouth noises. Bow, 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 bow. That's my Scar Tissue guitar interpret.
The guitar tone is great. Yours not as good. Sorry, Twan.
Mine's a little flat. Yeah, mine's out of tune. Could tune that shit. But this is a song that it certainly sets the tone for the album as a whole. But I don't think this could have lived on One Hot Minute, Mother's Milk. I think it probably could have lived on Blood Sugar Sex Magic, because it maybe has like an Under the Bridge vibe, and it certainly could have lived after that. But it's interesting, like when this came out, I don't think anyone was like, oh wow, this from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think this fit within the realm where maybe like Californication or Other Side was maybe a little different, right? But Scar Tissue, I think, was certainly in the wheelhouse, and it was a great song, and I think it has over 1 billion streams on Spotify, so like the public agrees.
One of 3 songs that have 1 billion streams.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Scar Tissue, Californication, Other Side from this album, right? Just from this album alone.
All right, what else? What other songs do you guys want to hit?
This is a rare album where my favorite song is not a single, and it's a deep cut. It's This Velvet Glove. It's always been
completely. Yep.
My favorite song. I remember the first time I heard this album was '99, and it was either burned copy or it was borrowed. Someone else bought it, but I borrowed it. I remember I first listened to it, and it was that song. It was everything about it. It was just a vibe. Kiedis might be his best vocal performance on the album, and not that he stretches, but just the way there's a melody, the way he carries the tune. It's just great. And I don't know. So, do you agree, Tom? What about you, Nate? You dig this Velvet Glove?
That's great. This is why we do this, right? Us 3 in particular, because I feel like anyone else, they'd pick a different track, but that is my favorite track on the record too. Is This Velvet Glove? In fact, all my favorite tracks on the record are all on the back half, and they're all deep cuts. It's This Velvet Glove, Right on Time, and Road Trippin' are my top 3.
Dude, right, I love Road Trippin', so I'm right there with you. Yeah, I wrote down for this underrated late album gem, and the bell guitar tone that Frusciante is so perfect at doing. And he has a couple different times on this record, he has different guitar tones, and they're wholly John Frusciante and nobody else, which is really cool. Like he goes back and forth between different sounds, and you still know it's him. That's a guy that knows what the hell he's doing. But this one is like a perfect Frusciante kind of melancholy, and Kiedis's vocals match the melancholy of the guitar tone, and it makes the song perfect for me. That's
dude, great call.
And not to bring back perfect songs, but yeah, it's right. That's what I thought as soon as I listened to it again today.
Yeah, he shifts his vocals in a way that I don't know. It's so unique, and I listened to this album a few times in prep for this. I don't know that anyone else does it that way. You know, it's we always talk about a vocalist. There are certain vocalists that you could look at them as their own instrument, right? He's definitely one of them. Him,
yeah,
Maynard, And there's not a lot of guys that sound like those guys or even try to do that stuff. And I was going to try to interpret it and give an impression. I'm not going to because I can't do it.
Yeah, you named
But
Maynard.
Nate can. You do it, Nate.
No, I can't do it. No, but you named Maynard. A few other people that can do it. Billy Corgan, I feel like can lean into that a little bit. It's very much like, yeah, it's like a 60s, 70s like doo-wop type thing. Like it's very hard to mold yourself into, I don't know, be kind of a conduit to the instrumentation of the record. But he just pulls it off, and I think it's awesome because albums prior, there's that funk thing which they're known for, but it really shows that this guy has range.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's notoriously not able to pull it off live in this era, unfortunately. So the record is a masterpiece, but he struggled with it in a live format. I have a DVD from this touring cycle, and he's off a lot, which is unfortunate. Shows how difficult it is because he was able to pull it off on the record. Maybe multiple takes. I know he took a lot of vocal coaching, but when he does it, it's beautiful, man. And this Velvet Glove shows that in particular.
Yeah, and they can do it live. I mean, go listen to Live in Hyde Park, right? That's a cool live record, and they sound great there. So it's not a matter of him not being able to do it. It's just a funky time frame for him. And you're right. He's a guy who pulls off being an extra instrument in the band. And I think sometimes when you're listening to words from Red Hot Chili Pepper songs, you're like, what the fuck is this guy saying? But he's not trying to convey anything with words. He's trying to match the energy of the music, and that's why it works. It's fun, it's different, it's weird in spots, but I think it's wholly them, and that's why it's cool.
Well, another way he does that, and this is a perfect song. While I was on mute, I was just like listening back to it. Is the volume of his vocals shifts, which I don't know. I have to listen to like my favorite bands, and I'm sure that's done and it's a studio trick, or it's when it's vocally performed in the booth, that's how they do it, and they fuck with the levels after all that stuff. But they're masters at it. Go listen to this song, and you'll notice the ebbs and flow, like the way he goes up and down and in and out. It's really fucking cool, and we're really geeking out about it because, yeah. This is my favorite song. I think it's probably my favorite Red Hot Chili Pepper song from any album.
Top one song, really? That's awesome. I love that. It's one of my favorites. It's the top 3 or 5 for me, so I'm right there with you. I wrote down for the song Porcelain, I wrote down it's slow. They slow it down here finally, right? And then it feels like, doesn't that feel like a Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness B-side?
Oh yeah,
yeah, it does. And I even the name of the song. Yeah, like
right. Porcelina.
It would fit the vibe of them. The irony is, I skipped this one. I never stick this one up.
No, it's not one of my favorites, but I just thought that was funny because it's a couple years after that record was huge, and they're bringing John back, doing their thing as a band, but they took from some of the stuff that happened right before them or around them, some of their contemporaries, and we mentioned Billy Corgan. So,
Emit Remus. I never knew that was Summertime Backwards until recently.
Yeah.
I just didn't. Well, because I didn't have my burned copy that it didn't have track lists on it, so I wasn't hip to the song titles unless this Velvet Glove and the singles. But other than that, I wasn't really hip to the song titles.
What about album sequence? There's one that stands out to me, which is Savior. Almost like kind of like a 70s vibe song. Yep. I feel like that should have been a closer. Not that Road Trippin's not a bad closer, but I feel like Savior might have been proper for a closer as well.
Savior would have been good as at the end of side, the first side, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a great one for that. And I wrote down for that song, classic Weird Peppers in a good way, and the guitar echo is cool. And it goes kind of back and forth between different types of song. And that's one of the weird funky ones that I like on this record, and there aren't some of the other ones I don't like. I could skip I Like Dirt, I could skip M and Remus. Purple Stain's not my favorite. There's a few that are just like, they're good, but they're not my favorite. That one's what I like.
Yeah, Savior feels like a last song type of thing, whether it's side A or side B. A good song though, like that's a song that just could not have existed on One Hot Minute. It wouldn't have fit. They wouldn't have gone that direction. The way the guitars come in, it's what makes them. And I never skipped that one. I say growing up, I'm still growing up, but when I was younger, I never skipped.
The big songs, I mean, I don't think any of us need to listen to Other Side again or Californication again, but Californication in the moment had that like video game video that was like totally
super funky
1999.
video.
But today you'd be like, what is this? And that's another one of those songs where you're just like, what are you even talking about, Anthony? But it works. Like, it totally works. It makes that song, you know, it brings it to another level that he's also weird. But the guitar tone's amazing. I love the Frusciante-ness of this record. It shines through in so many good songs, and this is one that I'm not super sick of at this point, even though we've heard it a billion times.
Yeah, Californication, I still love that song. I'm not gonna lie, like I don't skip it still because I mean, obviously it's got a storyline, but I feel like that guitar lick or those guitar lines, it's the perfect storytelling guitar line. You could put anything against that and it would be a perfect, just, you know, took a hike and this is my story and that riff is the background. So it doesn't have to be Californication. It's just a timeless guitar line or lick or however you want to say it. And it's also like music therapy. The way that song comes in, it just kind of puts you in like a little bit of a trance. And I love that about Frusciante. I think that may be why he's like one of the greatest, because it kind of, I don't know, it stops time.
So when this album dropped, I was 13. It was absolutely the first time I'd ever heard the term Californication. And certainly like there's the David Duchovny
TV
series,
show,
which
right?
I loved. That was great. It's a great show. But where did that come from? Did they invent that term, or was that a thing? I don't know. I was too young to, if it existed before 1999, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they came up with it. In fact, I want to say I'm pretty confident because the band tried to sue the television series to change the name because they were like, well, that's kind of ours. And they were not successful in that. Yeah. So they didn't trademark it, obviously. But that just shows, and someone will have to, you know, spot check me on if that's accurate, but that's what I read. And it was Frusciante that filed the motion for, hey, like can you change the name? Like that's ours. And we don't want it to be, you know, tarnished or whatever, have it be misrepresented to be something completely different than what is our record and our song. So I think they came up with it based on that from what I read. That was years ago that I read that, but
yeah, I think you're right.
I'm doing some real-time digging. It did exist before. It was it appeared in Time magazine in the 60s, but they made it popular. The Chili Peppers.
Yeah. Agreed.
It was referenced once in history in a Time magazine, but yeah, that was it's a cool name. And see, I would have thought it's such a unique term that the show would have had to get like permission, or at least say, hey, we were so inspired by your band or this album, like the whole vibe of it. I mean, look at the lyrics and the vibe. Like, we're going to make a show that is just, it's true California, and we're going to call it Californication.
Yeah, that's probably, you know, one of the lasting pieces of this is that did become popular and is the most listened to song on the record. And like Nate said, you're not really sick of it at this point, even though we've heard it so many times. 1.5 billion streams on Spotify. I thought it was closer to 1, so they're pushing 2 at this point. Last song that I wanted to hit, and you guys, if you have another one, please shout it out. But the end of Parallel Universe, where Flea, Chad, and John all come together, and it's just like this super, and Anthony's like screaming. It's like you're going 100 miles an hour down the highway, and I love that about that part of the song. And I think I texted you guys in the group. Just listening to Flea's bass line in that, my hand hurts. My hand, even though I'm not playing it. So yeah. That's just an amazing track from front to back.
It actually is the perfect soundtrack. To like a movie or TV show where maybe people are like leaving Las Vegas and heading you know, up the highway to California, or some like escape scene. Yeah.
No, agreed, man. It's just the tempo. It's the punk rock in them. You know what I mean? And it's, again, right at the beginning of the record. So it's just coming right at you. And I agree. I got tired listening to it too, or I felt tired. Like you said, my hand, like, damn, that kind of like insane picking. Like that must be
nuts.
How do you do that? How do you do that then? How do you especially do it now? I mean, they've gotten really old, but I feel like they still play that song. That's true, you know, musicianship at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'd love to ask Flea. He was sort of active on Twitter, but it's really only about the Lakers, and we're Celtics fans, so he doesn't want to talk to us.
Well, Flea, if you're hearing this, come on the podcast. One more song is track 5, Get on Top. It has Rage Against the Machine like instrumentals in the beginning.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's almost got that like classic kind of funk heaviness that you get with Rage, right? And then Kiedis melodic vocals and all that. But I don't know if I skipped that one growing up. Like maybe I just went from Other Side to Californication, but I didn't listen to that song as much. But I really enjoyed it listening back.
You must have my notes because I wrote funky and a callback to previous Chili Peppers. So I'm right there with you.
Dude, that's funny you said you likely skipped it because I know that I did. And I remember me and who was it? Someone used to joke, and our friend Zach, he'd be like, oh, I think it was our other friend Teddy. He'd be like, dude, you know what's so funny? Zach, his favorite song on the record is Get on Top. And we'd all laugh like, haha, that's like the skip track.
Oh, that's fun.
He would, though. That sounds like him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so all those tracks are, it's funny, like any one of those tracks could make any album hit, right? But then you have like fucking 7 or 8 of them all on the same album. So like they had the tracks, John's back, they got Ruben back, Californication's a cool name, and then the album cover, it's amazing. It could be one of the best album artwork concepts. I mean, I don't know if it was nominated for a Grammy of like best packaging or artwork or anything like that, but like this is the type of album that could win that. It's that good. It's just there's a lot you can read into it, and I just found myself like the last few days just kind of dissecting it, and there's not even a lot to it,
Yeah,
it hits though.
You know what's funny is like as we've gotten older, especially you, like, well, I think all of us agree, but Twan, you and I have identified on this a few times. It's just like band merch. Like simple is better these days. And that album cover has always been very simple, and I loved it then. I love it now, and it's like one of those posters that I want, and I want to frame it just because I like the way it looks, and it's I don't know, it captures you, but it's not too much, but it's not simple either, but it's simple enough, and it's a beautiful layout, everything about it, and like the fire, which should be a pool, but the ocean is in the back with the sky.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I love it.
I'm with you. It's simple, but also super effective, and it fits the record. It fits the kind of turmoil that you get in some of the songs, and the band had turmoil to that point too. So, and maybe they're putting it in their rear view, but this is how they did it. So I'm with you. It's cool. I didn't see in my brief half-assed internet research, as we like to say, and steal from Bill Simmons, I didn't see if it got any awards or anything, but it's very cool. Probably maybe their best album cover.
I think it is. Yeah.
Mother's Milk a close second.
for different reasons.
Yeah. All right. So not wrapping up, but kind of wrapping up here. The legacy of the record. I think it is amazing what they were able to pull off with John coming back. With it probably felt like to them 4 old friends getting back together to do something they'd done a million times and do it at the highest level they'd ever done it. And I think that is exactly what happened here. And it still hits today. Like I said at the beginning, it still sounds fresh. It's my second favorite record by them. I like By the Way a little bit more, but not by much. They're 1A, 1B in this world. But this record still hits. It's still amazing. 25 years out.
Yeah, I absolutely have spent the most time with this album, and it's for a good reason. I think it's the best one. Yeah, I think this is one that there's certain albums to get to a certain tier, and for albums that end up, and not that it's all sales, but albums that sell a certain amount, it's got to have the tracks, it's got to have the music videos, there's got to be, maybe some theme, the optics of the band, the album artwork, all that. I think you will find a lot of the ones outside of the real pop stuff, like forget the super poppy stuff, but maybe rock bands. I think you'll find a theme where all those are in sync and it's intentional and they all kind of hit. I don't think there's any like Diamond. No, I don't think this went Diamond. I don't think there's any Diamond records where they're whiffing on any, on any of those. And so I think they hit all these, and I think it, it makes sense that this album did as well as it did, and it was a comeback, and it had all the ingredients to be great, and it did. And yeah, I mean, it has at least three songs on it that have 1 billion streams. I mean, it's wild, and I don't think they've matched it, which is not taken away from any of the other stuff, but
the one thing to toss at that, the billion streams, we always say that. We're just talking Spotify. Like Apple Music, I'm sure the numbers are high. YouTube Music, I'm sure they're not as high, but they're high. There's other streamers out there, right? So that's 1 billion on one platform. The biggest platform, but one platform. That's crazy.
Crazy. It is. Yeah, everything fell into place with this. The storyline's perfect. You could write a movie about this, you know? But yeah, I think the legacy, it lives on today. Like we said, we save these episodes for like these types of records. So,
well, you just said something that I kind of half wrote down, which is there could be a movie about this. It's the lead up to a record like this with a band that broke up and had drug issues and guitarists left and all, you know, late 90s going into 99, whole new era, whole new decade. You have to think about what that's like for a band, because if you're a band that's been around since the 80s, which they have, they're spanning different like ebbs and flows and like sound and what's popular. To be able to be relevant for multiple decades and still hit and put out records like this is unbelievable. You know, only so many bands can do that. It has to be like a crazy lightning in a bottle type situation with members that are cohesive enough to have an output like this, like for a full record is just unheard of. You start to think of bands like Led Zeppelin, you know, the Beatles, but this is our era. You know what I mean? We were lucky to get it. And I think that's another thing that's so special about it is like, I always thought like, oh, we kind of missed the heyday. You know what I mean? Especially being a big grunge head. I was like, man, I wish I was a little bit older. I would have been around for like the last kind of era of amazing music. Well, it's not necessarily true, because bands like this, Red Hot Chili Peppers, put out their best music when we were like kind of discovering music in full form. And it's, you know, like you said, those spins, and I think it's their best selling record of all time, right? So we really did luck out. And I just love everything about it. The atmospheric notion about it. And I don't know, I think it really made me appreciate the guitar more than ever with John's work, because it made me realize there's things that still haven't been done. I think I've said that in other episodes about his work, because he's so amazing and just these wild solos and whatnot. But those simplistic Californication scar tissue riffs are just so simplistic, but and it does carry the band. We can't like deny the fact that it carries the band, but it's another level. And Chili Peppers are on another level, and I credit a lot of that to John and this record and everything that came after it too.
Yeah, he has been a big piece of the engine that makes them go. As much as we like the rest of the band, I mean, I love that they have a sense of humor. I love that they're kind of in on the joke at times, right? Like Chad Smith doing the drum off with Will Ferrell. That's amazing. The Flea just being an all around different dude is amazing. Being a huge NBA head like us too, which is cool. Even though he's a Lakers fan, we'll forgive him this one time. But yeah, just a cool band, man. And you're right, Nate. We get to grow up in this era. We get to grow up and see it. And you know, when people talk about Led Zeppelin to us, like, oh yeah, I was there in '77. Like, cool. Well, we were there in '99 when this happened. So that's ours now. We're old enough to be those guys, which is kind of cool and also a little crazy.
Yeah. It's funny. You don't, like, I don't think about that unless like, we have combos like this, you know? To me, you know, in the moment, just kind of it's another year, blah, blah, blah. But then now you're removed from all these years. It's like, shit, that album was amazing. They were at the top of their game. I'm looking now. It got nominated for a Grammy. Best Rock Album. Got nominated. The song Californication got nominated Best Rock Performance. Scar Tissue nominated Best Vocal Performance. So we're high on this album and the legacy of it. Certainly everyone else is. And all the rankings I saw online, I looked at a bunch of them. They either have this 1 or 2.
Yeah. Which makes sense. It definitely makes sense. Damn. We did it. We banged that one out pretty fast, boys.
Yeah, that was a quickie for us.
Love that record. Love that band. It's always fun to do these and grab a record that maybe you spent a ton of time with, but it had been a minute, and it was good to put this one back in the headphones. So, good suggestion, Twan. I appreciate you. All right, that can stop. All right, boys. This is the end of the year, so we're back next week with another episode, right? But that's been recorded already. So yeah, this is the last time you'll hear us record anything new in 24. We'll be back in 25 after our fun second half conversation with Damien next week, which I'm almost done editing. It's really good. Like it's an old school. We've always joked about the Joe Rogan special. This was a Joe Rogan special, and it's really It's
Nice.
entertaining because we get a little loopy. It's late at night. We're just throwing stuff against the wall and then talking about it and having a blast. Like it's wide ranging, and you guys will like that one too.
Nice. I look forward to that. Yeah, I don't remember all the deets of that one, so
Me either. It's been great.
just because it was so late.
Yeah.
All right, let's get a good night's sleep, recharge for the new year, all that fun stuff. Thanks for checking us out. Check out the back catalog. Check in on each other. Peace.
Yeah. Peace, podheads.
Cheers, nerds, and cheers, drones.
Thank you for listening to Podioslave. We are at Podioslave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Podioslave Podcast. YouTube, Podioslave Podcast there. Email us at podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you. Cheers, drones. What the? Okay, I mean...
you can edit that out.
No, this is at the end. This is going at the end. Cheers, drones.
Part of the UFO invasion. You gotta timestamp it, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, there's something in the back room.